Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Last week I gave you a little rundown of my own personal political development, but with one pretty important omission. Namely, the fact that I didn't really talk about anything that occurred within my uh, more public uh, side of my political development, or the public-facing side of my political uh, development. Namely, when I was a member um, of a political party that actually had some seats in my birth country's parliament. So I thought I would use this video to talk about my experiences within that party. Last year on my main channel that I'll get to soon enough, I actually read and reviewed a book that was specifically about the rise and fall of that party, which is typically known as USR, though in my video of it I refer to it as SRU, namely where I just kind of translated an abbreviated name, even though its English language branding or marketing calls it still refers to it as by its Romanian name of USR. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to stick with the I'm going to stick with the branding that the party itself has chosen. I don't know, for the sake of simplicity. Uh, anyway, the story of my participation within the party uh, actually doesn't start with my participation within the party, but rather it starts a little bit earlier, or more precisely a few years earlier, with with a series of ongoing civic protests and civic initiatives aimed towards reforming the political systems of my birth country of Romania, which is an initiative I very much applauded. And at the time I actually mentioned my regret of having left Romania, in order to pursue my studies, because I thought that those those civic initiatives were something that I would have wanted to become a part of, because I recognize the meaning and the importance of the things that are of the things that those initiatives aim to achieve. With my personal point within this development around the middle of the 2010s was that I was getting off the alt right pipeline, and I was starting to um, re-educate, or freshly educate myself on various new perspectives of sociology and history, and and maybe perhaps look a little bit more closely in how that affected minority um, social groups. I knew there were certain aspects of history that were less than savory and exclusionary before that, but it was really within that point of my life that I actually delved a little bit more, and it was also assisted by the fact that uh, I immersed myself within that current of civic participation, where a lot of those issues were starting to become addressed. Nevertheless, uh, they were picking up momentum, even though those movements didn't really generate much of a change, until a certain a flashpoint that occurred on October 30th, 2015, the so-called collective fire, where there was a fire that started out at during a band's concert, and dozens of people died at the time. and it turns out it was discovered that the fire was started because of uh, because of insufficient fire safety provisions, and which were allowed to slip due to uh, basically basically due to enforced negligence, if you get my drift. And that really generated a huge wave of protests that lasted for about 10 days until the incumbent government or ministerial cabinet all resigned en masse. So, in order to contend with that, a uh, a a new prime minister was appointed, uh, and a more or less caretaker government was put in place to carry the nation over until the next wave of parliamentary elections. This was called the technocratic government because it was selected because the prime minister at the time was an independent, which was something that was more or less generally supported at the time. And all of the people who the prime minister appointed were more or less also independents, and primarily selected for their competence and experience within the given fields. And that actually led to some improvements, some changes towards the positive for the for the nation. And around that same time, in 2016, a party that up until then had been a local party, USB, Save Bucharest Union, became a nationwide party, namely the Save Romania Union, USR. And and towards the end of the year, when Romania had its parliamentary elections, USR was expected to do somewhat well, and perhaps it did for a party uh, uh, that was less than a year old, or at least had a major rebranding occur over the past year, with 8% with an 8% participation rate. There was a little bit of a disappointment from the results of that election. First of all, because there were lots of people who didn't participate. Like, the participation rate was less than 40%, and that allowed some deeply unpopular politicians to once again form the National Assembly. Only instead of discouraging civic initiatives, that ended up galvanizing them a little bit more. And and it is within that context that USR itself started to also grow. There was somewhat of a scandal concerning a leadership contest within the party around 2017, but that didn't really dissuade anyone or discourage their growth. Like, they still had, like I think they still had steady rates of admission, so to speak, and they were still growing. Nevertheless, I didn't really have an opportunity to join them, though I did have the inclination to do so, until the summer of 2018, when I was relatively convinced that other facets in my life also allowed me to participate within the activities of this party. And yeah, if for those of you who I might not have seen last week's video, that was about the time when I really completed my turn towards becoming uh, a progressive, at least from a social standpoint. But economically, I was still somewhat of a centrist. I was still on my egoistic altruism route, which is namely that taxes are good because taxes make other people's lives better, and if other people's lives get better, then those other people can make your personal life better, or those other people can make the lives of other people better, which in turn makes your life better. It's kind of a mess, but that was what was going on, or at least that was the principle. by which by which I guided myself, and that was the principle which I also wanted to see implemented. Uh, Keep in mind, I was still operating under the technocratic principle of the right combination of policies will lead to the best results in terms of what good public governance looks like. And it is within that context that I decided to join up with Fusere, given that a lot of the ministers from that previously mentioned technocratic government became Fusere members after its dissolution, and that was very much the vibe and the advertising that this party had, that it was a technocratic party, that it was a um, that was more or less a social corporation, and that it was about you know grassroots and competence based promotion and community building. And what can I say? I found those aspects to be uh, quite important, quite interesting, and it's for those reasons that I decided to join. I applied. I had a uh, I had an admission interview on the 15th of August, if I'm not mistaken, and then by September I was a fully fledged member, and also around that time I started involving myself in the party and in various discussions, especially because around that time, late 2018, was when the party really had its first major political moment, where there was a referendum about um, not the legalization of gay marriage, but about a proposition within the Constitution that would make a later legalization of gay marriage impossible, or maybe not impossible, but much harder to pull through. And that is one point where USER's characteristic as an umbrella party, where people from all walks of life and all political orientations and joining together for a common cause started to shake up a little, because there were a lot of far right people who who wanted to see this referendum pass and this initiative come to fruition. Um, USR was notably the one party at a time in Romania that was very much opposed to this referendum and very much called for it to be boycotted. Somewhat fitting, and even though that was not the uh, the unanimous belief of all of its members, that led to the first round of, I'll say, inter-party conflict that I was a witness to, and it led to a lot of the far right members of the party quitting, uh, quitting the party, and ultimately that gambit turned out to be a good idea, because Usere decided to boycott the referendum, and it turns out so did uh, most of the populace, as the referendum didn't meet the participation quota that would be necessary in order for the referendum itself to pass. So even though quite a lot of people even though quite a lot of the people who voted in support of it, I think somewhere like 90%, very few of the participants actually voted. Very few of Romanians who had an active right to vote actually participated, and that momentum really helped carry USR forward. That and its other initiatives about directly preventing corruption, and that was done in a somewhat liberal, individualistic manner, where they spearheaded an initiative to keep people who have corruption charges outside of public office, and they even had like a specific definition as to what it means to be um, to have a certain charge and what public office is, and that initiative went on to have a lot of support, and it carried Usare to a lot of momentum within the next election cycle, and which was in 2019, 2020, when there were on the one hand EU Parliament elections, then presidential elections, then local, and then parliamentary elections. So yeah, all of them in the space of 2 years. Usare did very well in the EU Parliament elections, and that led to a new surge of attention upon the party, and really a lot of support and a lot of optimism. The trouble Usare had was that they didn't really connect to their audience, or connect to the voting public, even though even though they talked about it a lot, they still very much presented themselves as more as a field of academics and of professionals, where they really tried to emphasize that, and didn't do a good job at emphasizing the the meanings of the policies they themselves would at least try to support, try to implement. It was arguably not as important within the presidential elections, given the president has some uh, particularly strange set of attributes when it comes to Romanian politics. But I digress. Still, the base message was that even though Usare was was doing its best and was trying to create various internal groups to facilitate both internal and external communication, and in order to allow for better ways to formulate its messaging, that ultimately fell through, and they and somewhat obviously in hindsight, Usare didn't win the presidential elections, didn't even go to the second round, even though that was something they were looking forward to. The president of the party, rather than going away outright, held an internal referendum on whether or not he should still stay president, which which in hindsight was perhaps not the best or strongest decision he could make. But what would happen afterward was particularly bad. Also, keep in mind 2019. This was about the time I remember I said in my last video that I got fired from the job I liked, and then turned fully towards communism because I saw that as a way for people to really truly empower themselves, or rather, cooperative ownership of companies. Yeah. Anyway, beyond that, this was there were two things that really I'll say affected the mood within the party at the time. First off was a controversy surrounding the petition about people who were charged about how people who were charged for corruption shouldn't hold public office. Like, there was a lot of talk about how successful that campaign was and how there were a million signatures gathered. Well, one person within the party rang an alarm bell, according to which some of those signatures might not have been entirely sourced correctly, and for that reason, instead of there being an investigation on that person was just flatly kicked out, which did not bode well. So that was one way in which the party leadership ended up ended up souring its relationship to the grassroots of the party. The second one um, was about a referendum towards towards USERE adopting an official ideological doctrinary position. It was a as I said, an umbrella party until then, and it is at that point that it decided to adopt an official one. I personally boycotted it because that is not why I joined the party, and also a lot of other people also boycotted it. But apparently not enough for the initiative to to not pass. Still there were some debates as to whether or not that vote was entirely carried out correctly, given there is some debate as to whether or not it included members who were suspended and stuff like that. But still, the fact that it took place at all didn't really help, because there were lots of instances and lots of smaller issues, particularly when it comes to when it comes to method, where it was considered to be where it was considered that the new doctrinary position would be insufficient or would not meaningfully address the the issues the constituents would have. Regardless, it is with those controversies that USERE went into the next two elections, and it obtained some modest results. Like they weren't catastrophic, but they perhaps could have been better. The messaging could have been better. The party cohesion could have been somewhat supported. And in case you're wondering what I've been doing over this time, well, the answer is not much. Because even though there was a lot of effort by the party to actually bring people in line and sort of get them on the same level as the party machine, there wasn't really a lot of effort when it came to utilizing the inputs that the that the party members would bring. Like, there were there were such initiatives that were in general brought forth, but they didn't really. But I'm not sure to what extent they were sufficiently credited and adapted, and that led to some level of unpleasantness. Also, there were lots of controversy concerning internal elections and precisely how the timing for those internal elections was was selected. And it is within those internal elections that a lot of the issues that the party leadership had set up that had started to come home to roost, as the people who supported those those bad decisions ended up clashing with the ones that didn't. And somewhat obviously, the people who had the favor of the party leadership ended up having favorable results throughout the political party, and that led to a lot of discontent within the party. And by the end of the year, by the end of 2020, pandemic aside, there was also a lot of external discontent, because while the party did get they did get a decent result, it wasn't and they knew they could have gotten a much better result if the cooperation within the party had actually gone better. On the one hand, on the other hand, another reason for that external discontent is because a newly formed far-right party in 2020 had ascended to the national parliament. A far-right party that contained plenty of formerly far-right members from USERE itself, which, is perhaps darkly humorous in hindsight, but at the time was very, very bitter. I can say that much. and people were starting to wonder, well, what can we do now? And well, a lot of initiatives were discussed. Again, not a lot of them carried through because the leadership didn't really favor that. They were focused on trying to implement their own ideology within the within the Romanian government. And those merits of the ideology aside, they were not they the party itself wasn't exactly popular because it very much ran on an anti-corruption platform. And the thing about anti-corruption platforms is that they always blamed the people who were incumbent at the time said corruption was alleged to take place. And now Usere was expected to work alongside the people they accuse of being corrupt, which, not gonna lie, led to some unpleasant results and some prolonged, arguably unnecessary conflicts. 8 months after the new governing coalition was formed, it was disbanded because all of the Usere ministers, were decided to quit en masse. The results of that I'd rather not discuss, but you can find out about them in news reports from the last 2.5 years, more or less. Regardless, at that point, my political development was already completely parallel to that of the party. I did still try to lead discussions about political doctrine and about political initiatives and about the motivating factors within historical records, within academic records, and while that did lead to some interesting discussions at times, it did also lead to myself and various others who were similarly progressive to just get shouted down by the same group of people, and ultimately all of those talks led to nothing but huge arguments with no serious effort as far as policy or law or anything like that really resulting from that. And I was fully willing to accept that there would be people who would with different political opinions from me. It's why I signed up with it. It was after all, Usere was an umbrella party when I signed up, so I knew I would perhaps butt heads with some people. But I did not expect the butting of heads to result in that much white noise. Like, there were rarely any serious discussions or initiatives that I can really say resulted from those conversations. And it's because of that after I blocked a lot of people, and after a lot of the other deceptions and disappointments that occurred throughout the party's time in government, a lot of people started to quit, to the point where there was an exodus over several months. Personally, I didn't quit with that exodus. I quit sometime later because I realized that even the people or the initiatives that I still thought had some merit to them, I don't know. I just couldn't bring myself to meaningfully participate with that. There wasn't enough room for me or for my convictions to really have an impact upon the party itself. And it is for that reason that I quit around a year ago. Nevertheless, I was still involved with some of the Facebook groups that the party was that the party had set up. And I'm not gonna lie, most of the activity of the party, or at least most of the activity I was a witness to, occurred over Facebook groups. Maybe that's why it failed, because, or maybe that's why my initiatives failed, because I was too far apart from, um, you know, most other initiatives and most other, or rather most other meaningful participations. Still, it signaled to me that my time and my efforts were uh, were of better use invested somewhere else. Regardless, still spend some time uh, on the Facebook groups, and I noticed a post around the time of my around the time I left, which was when others also started fleeing in a perhaps not a mini exodus, but a little uh, exit wave. And uh, one person who was still in the party said that she regretted not that the party doesn't carry out like exit interviews in order for them to learn why it is that people quit, so they could perhaps improve their own their own standing and their own relationship to their member base. Notice that they're still calling it exit interviews, so they're still thinking in the terms of like corporations and how those would and how typical like capitalist corporations would be are the height of the organization of human effort, even though they're not actually the case, that's not actually the case, but I have other videos on that. Still, I actually left a very lengthy answer to that person's post. Person's named Paula, and coincidentally, I copied it on my cell phone. It's in Romanian, so I'm just gonna kind of translate it as I go. Okay, I will answer. It's not your fault, Paula. Quite the contrary. People like you are the reason I have I have stayed in the party for for as long as I have. The problem I had with the party is twofold. First of all, obstructionism. Second of all, lack of perspective. There are people within this party who are truly involved and truly look for social and administrative solutions. But there are members who, even though they have a stable and well thought out moral system, still resort to cronyism, by which they deny all forms of critique or improvement of the internal organization of this party. And then there are others who, even if they do fit in that first, they do fit in that first party of people who look for solutions. They ignore the horrible behavior of many of their colleagues, seeking to uh, sweep any indiscretions under the rug rather than addressing it and throwing it away. The party, from that point of view, still works under the despair of a revolutionary, but without the ambition or persistence of said revolutionary to implement their vision. It doesn't look for ideological support, and instead it holds on to the people who declare its loyalty towards the ideals of the party, even though their actions are contrary to those ideals. Hence, obstructionism. As for the second point, I entered USR guided by the idea that it is an umbrella party, and that the best solutions are achieved through dialogue and implemented via consensus. Over time, however, I noticed that the people within the party don't have the diversity of perspectives or the empathetic or cognitive capacity necessary to process the quantums of truth or utility that various political positions have for the Romanian electorate. Quite the contrary. Most of the people are focused upon fixating Western neoliberalism as being the perfect ideological backdrop and foundation, adapted here and there in order to address the problems considered defining for Romania. Even though this even though this backdrop firstly only works in the West because the West supports economic and diplomatic relationships on a global level based on its imperialist and colonialist history. Second of all, it already shows its limits by the fact that every country that is developed upon this backdrop has large fascist or ultranationalist movements that push those countries towards neo-feudalism. Romania doesn't need the policies that made Poland richer in the 90s. Romania needs the policies that Germany will seek out in 5 years in order to maintain its stability. And I do not notice this vision, this capacity to recognize problems and to implement solutions within the party. I hope this sensor will help you improve, will help kick you out of your complacency, and allow you to start to recognize how you can better fulfill your goals. And yeah, that was it. My response did generate a little bit of a discussion, but it pretty much died down soon afterwards. And given I already left the party and I started also phasing myself out of those groups, I have no idea to what extent, that and any of that has actually been considered, or whether or not the feedback of any other exiter has been considered. I do know of various others that have since left the party and have generated various other movements, or have joined various other movements. And now I am somewhat curious what their results will be next year, when those 4 election cycles that I've noticed over 2019 and 2020 will all occur within the same year. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch, and but not. However, I will have a somewhat more limited perspective as an outsider. And now, the question might arise as to whether or not I will find some other party, because I still do support to some extent other parties, but nothing really matches what I consider necessary for for Romania, or for stable politics in general. I guess the answer is, for now I'm still on my observer mode, looking at what's going to happen, and hopefully influencing various facets in such a way as to bring a result I would consider helpful. And yeah, that was my history with the party. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, and maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If you have anything you'd like to add to the party itself, or to my experiences with it, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell, or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about book-related and literature topics, a link to which you can find in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out, should you choose to. Additionally, you have the option of supporting me on Patreon, where depending on the level at which you pledge, you will receive various perks, such as, for example, early access to my videos and scripts, both for this channel and the aforementioned main one. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.